Welcome to the Coffee Break Show. Today, we are going to show you the money. That's right. We're going to be showing you the money, and I'll be right back. Welcome to the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life channel. This is the Coffee Break Show. I am Vickie Helm, and today I have Jenn on, and I think it's Wolowich-Widney. Is that how you say it, Widney? Say it.
Wolowich-Widney, yeah.
Wolowich-Widney.
Wolowich-Widney, super close.
Wolowich-Widney. That's a tongue twister for me. Wolowich-Widney. Nice to see you on today with us. I see you guys dropping in. Do me a favor, put your name down below, be part of the conversation. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is money and the getting of it, the taking care of it. And Jenn has been a money nerd like all her life. And so I want her to tell the story because I think it's so funny because, you know, when you're a little kid, you will have professions that you look up to, like, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a doctor. Never do you see a little kid who says, I want to be a banker. Let's play bank. But that's where you started from. And I got to start from that thing. How did you get to be a money nerd?
Oh, I don't know if it's something I became or something I was born. I have a sister who's very close in age to me who always wanted to play house, and I always wanted to play bank. So, I mean, I had my fair share of time playing house and Barbies in exchange for her to come to my bank, where I was armed with deposit slips, withdrawal slips, anything that the bank would let me take. I had a neighbor who had an old checkbook to a bank account she wasn't using anymore, so she gave us that to use. So I could play it all day long. We had Monopoly money in the mix. The kits, I've actually bought my kids now with like fake money to play with, are quite deluxe because I just have such fond memories of it. But yeah, anything that was bank related, I was in. If mom needed to go and update her passbook at the bank or, you know, get $20 out, I was jumping in the car to participate in that. So yeah.
And you know, it's so interesting that has led to the career that you have. And the career that you have is you help people master money. And this to me is so important. And I want to know the difference. It's like everybody seems to want to learn money and know about money, but not how to master money. I want to know right now, let's just start off with why did you pick this career? What's the difference between your mastering money and just knowing about money?
Well, being born a money nerd didn't mean I was good at it. You know, I understood it. I knew, you know, like spend more money than you make and you won't have any. But it didn't stop me from making all sorts of money mistakes and learning through my own experience. So knowing money and learning money, like you're saying, versus understanding money and mastering your money are significantly different. My now ex-husband, but husband at the time, we just both happened to be fortunate to have good jobs. So I always thought, like, we're so good at money, we're really great at money. And then, you know, there was a job loss for him, and then then we were having our daughter, and all of a sudden I'm not employed anymore, and we had no good money habits. We just happened to be in a privileged position where we were out earning our bad habits. And when that earning potential basically plummeted down to about 25% of what we were originally making, the bills were coming that we no longer had money to pay. And it was a really humbling moment, maybe I should say, to realize, like, oh, actually I'm not masterful at my money. Just because I understand the concept of it didn't mean I was doing any great, you know, financial habits to get us ahead. We were just fortunate to have good jobs, and, you know, which isn't to, like, I think what I've learned since then is that when you have good habits, your income becomes much more irrelevant. You know, we can't.
Yes. Isn't that an interesting statement you just made? I don't want to pass by this, Jenn, because I think the two things that you just said were so important. Most people live by this. This is what they do. They live by being in their good careers and just being able to out earn their bad money habits. Oh my God, that should be a bumper sticker. I know I've done that too in my younger years. That's what how people live. They out earn their bad money habits. And then when they get into a situation, they see their bad money habits, but they didn't prepare for anything. You don't see it. You think you're doing well with money. You think you're okay. This is a key insight right here for me because I think that that illusion is all the way through the masses, especially middle income, all the way through the masses. That is, I love that you said that. Can you give us an idea of maybe a couple of things that if somebody was outspending their bad money habits, what does that lifestyle look like? Are you outspending your bad money habits? You understand my question?
I think so. Like just in terms of, I don't, maybe don't even want to label it bad, but uninformed. Like we're making,
Uninformed money habits. I love
yeah,
it.
like because I mean, we're allowed to spend money on things that bring us joy, but when we're doing that from a position of being uninformed, we're maybe not making them in consistency with where we want to be or where we're going. So we need to spend some time figuring out like where do we want to go? Where are we right now? And are we spending money in a way that's living up to what we want? Right. So if I, one of the things I kind of latched onto when we were trying to transition into some better money habits is, I keep saying like, oh, I value time with my family. I value time with my family. And then, every time we're at the store, I'm like, ooh, I want this and I want this, I want this, or oh, I'm going to go out to eat here. And oh, I need this shirt in 14 colors. And it's like, okay, but anything I'm buying then takes away time from my family to go earn the money to buy these things. So it's not that I'm not allowed to have nice things, but do I need 14 of the same shirts, or do I need another pair of shoes, or do I need the trip that's going to come with the interest because I don't have the money, or can I just delay that trip a little bit until I can save the money and then go interest free? Because anything we buy on credit
Yeah.
costs us double, triple,
Yeah.
quadruple the price, right? So I mean, I'm a huge fan of travel. I've traveled more in the last 12 months than I have probably in my whole life, but every trip I go on, I'm like save first, go on the trip. And it also just alleviates some stress. So I think in terms of getting informed about your financial habits is taking a look at what are you spending your money on. One of the areas I see the most that people severely underestimate what they're spending is food. And I
Yes.
understand grocery prices are going totally
Sky
insane
high.
right now. So it's not even a matter of being reckless, but just being aware that, I can sit with a family who's like, oh, I think I spend $1,000 a month on food. And it turns out when we take a look, they're spending $2,800. So
Yeah.
like when we're doing that and or more or different areas or different topics, but when we don't know where our money is going, we we struggle to keep ahead of it and master it, right? Budgets became such a dirty word that everybody's like, oh, I don't want a budget, it sounds so terrible. But I mean, call it what you want, put a fancy label on it, an abundance plan, a cash flow plan, whatever you want. But when we know where our money's going, we can then have complete control, right? Like I might not sign up every day to be like, I love spending money on electricity and property taxes. Those are maybe fun places my money goes, but I like being a homeowner and I like turning the lights on. So like these
Yep.
are bills I pay, and I have to,
Yep.
I have to make adjustments according to the home I choose to live in.
And I think this is one of the, pieces of habits that we have that I think is part of the issue is that keeping up with the Joneses. You said a couple of things that I really like. Do you have to have all the colors of that shirt? And we have this thing where, you know, we call it shopping therapy. I actually think that this can be it's like an illness. It's a disease right now that that we have the credit cycle that we have. We think we're allowed to overindulge. We can't say no to ourselves. And the second, it's like, they tell you the alcoholic. If an alcoholic can't say no to a beer, no, thank you, no, no. If they have to have it, there's an addiction there. And that, yeah, thank you, retail therapy. Thank you, Robin. this retail therapy right here, it's an addictive behavior where we can do this kind of consumerism when we're outpacing our, bad money habits. We don't look at shopping as a bad money habit, especially because they sell it to us like, well, you save 60% today. It's 40% off. It's this. There's some things. And what I want to know, Jenn, is somebody with some good money habits. What is that like? What do they do that's different? What are some good money habits anybody can start at any age, especially like good money habits for children, good money habits for college students, good money habits for adults? Like, what are some of those things that people can start learning to do versus constantly having to go have retail therapy to feel good?
Yeah, I think we never want to shame anybody for when they're spending money, but when we do it at the expense of our future selves, we're the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are going to suffer. So when you're saying things like retail therapy, what I'm imagining is that we're spending now at the expense of future us. And it's trying to find a
That's right.
balance between, some harmony really between getting to enjoy some of our money with no shame now,
That's
but
right.
also making sure that we're not paying the consequences for those choices in 5, 10, 20 years from now. So, and in terms of like when can we start establishing great financial habits, like I joke all the time with my clients, the second your kids are old enough to not eat the money, they're ready to start learning about it.
Yeah.
We just went to my kids and I just got back from Disney World 3 or 4 days ago, and it was, there was conversation ahead of time, like this is what we're saving for, this is the money we're saving. When we're there, we have money, like we have money. And I mean, Disney World is not an inexpensive adventure, but it can also be horrifyingly expensive if you're not paying attention. And we went
Absolutely.
into it knowing like, okay, this is what hotel and flights are, this is what the passes are, this is what we have for food. And we committed, as like the three of us, to we would bring a water bottle on park and just keep filling it up all day, because if we were buying the bottled water on park, I believe it was $4 or $5 American, which feels like $40 Canadian right now, but that would just eat up our money. And we're like, you know what, we're not going to look back on our trip and be like, I'm so glad for all that bottled water, right? We're not
Yeah.
going to look back. I mean, we're all looking back being like, I'm so happy I got that Mickey Mouse shaped caramel apple all day long, right? But the bottled water wasn't going to be the thing that like knocked it out of the park for us. And I know that seems silly, but when you have 3 people on park in 30-degree heat for 12 to
Yeah.
14 hours days, that's a lot of water.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a lot of money. So, and
Yeah.
I also didn't want us to be like, ooh, I don't want to get another bottle. It was like, no, like drink water, like let's stay hydrated. But just little things like that. And then because of that, and because, we ended up just like bringing some like juice and stuff on park. On park, we bought 0 beverages all week, which then
Wow.
meant we got to the end of the week with lots of money that we had budgeted for this trip. And so, so then at the end, we're in the last store, and I'm like, look at like each of you kiddos, like here's an extra $50 to buy something that you will take home and get joy from and excitement from it, because you didn't drink it this week. Right. I mean, I probably had more money than that left, but I wasn't going to just give it all out. But it was a great opportunity to show them like the water wasn't going to be the thing that brought you joy. But my son walked out of there with this little stuffy he'd been admiring all week, and he was so proud to walk out of there with it. And my daughter picked out this backpack thing that she just had to have, and it's been everywhere we've been since we've been home. And
Cool.
so I think even when you're in your own day-to-day life, it's just finding ways to be like, you know what, like absolutely. Do I like to go and do fun things? For sure. But can I also find ways to do something that's really fun that doesn't cost anything, and make sure
Yeah.
that when I'm spending money, it's on something that's going to really give
Beautiful.
me immense amounts of joy?
God, I love what we're talking about here. I remember this from a long time ago. It was like, a couple of decades ago. I went on this vacation, and it was a Club Med vacation. So, it's everything is in one place. And there were these extra activities. If you wanted to do this or do this or do this, it cost extra. And I had saved all the money for all those extra things. And when I got to the Club Med area, it's so beautiful and it's so amazing where we went. And I remember I didn't do any of the extracurricular things that were on that. I wanted to be in the water and snorkeling and doing the things. And I found out that what they sell you in those packages or those things, you actually can plan for, save for, and do that. But I, like you, I came back with a fortune because this sunset cruise over here was, $350. And then this thing over here was $250 or, whatever. And so, and there was two of us. So, um, everything that I had planned on doing, we were like, no, the sun's going to set right there in front of us. And we got a cocktail here. I'm not going to go on a boat out there to see that. I spent the whole day in the water and I didn't sacrifice. And so the other thing that I think I is important for me, my parents taught me this, and they didn't teach it in a horrible way, but it's the ability to tell yourself no in different ways. Like, there's always that time when your friends are like, hey, come on out and we're blah, blah, blah. And how can I say no and hold my boundary no, and without hurting them or excusing myself from the event because I didn't want to pay for it. I didn't want to, indulge in that at that moment. But I actually had, some of the financial things that I wanted to prepare for because, like you were very young when you had these proclivities of, I'm playing bank and now I'm going to outpace this and etc. And I know what that's like. And there's a point where telling yourself no without feeling disappointed or without shaming yourself, like you said, I don't want to shame anybody with this. It's a tool to use, and how we use it is great. But I want to go now to financial planning. So let's say you meet somebody and the relationship gets serious. And now we're talking about finances and things like that. Or perhaps maybe that area where, your husband lost his job and you were having the baby and you were like, okay, now what we do? We're at 25% of the income we used to have. How do you have those conversations, and what did you guys do, and how did you begin to figure out you wanted to do something different, and now you teach people that?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of do things at the extreme until I find the happy medium here in the middle. So I went from being a spending junkie to, a saving maniac where, I was like, well, gotta keep it going, gotta keep the wheels turning, and just kind of shut down all spending. And then, but then somewhere in the middle of this with like we balanced out around half the income in the end, managed to pay off our mortgage while I was staying at home. Right. So
Nice.
it's like half the money mortgage got paid off. Right. And then now in two households with, him living separate and me here, like the wheels kept turning for everybody because we had just established some good habits. And in terms of like literally just money awareness and paying attention and looking at the cash flow that's coming in and the cash flow that's coming out and deciding like what's really important. I can't speak to what he does with his money anymore, but in my house, like I'm a person who just re-entered the workforce 3 years ago in any meaningful way, right? And being like, oh, I like having shelter and buying food. So, how am I going to make a go of that? And really, like, it's funny though, where our mind will play tricks on us, right? Like when that happened, and I'm a stay-at-home mother now, and the breadwinner is gone. I'm like, whew, like that mental gymnastics where like I went to the bank and I took out $1,000. I took 10 $100 bills because for sure I'm thinking we're going to be homeless because this is what's happening, right? And I mean, back it up, like our house is mortgage free. There's lots of savings, but that our brain is not logical sometimes when it comes to money. So I went and took out $1,000 thinking like, well, this will be what I need if we can't get food from the food bank, which is silly based on the circumstances that I was in, but it really makes it real. Like when I'm working with people who are going through separations, whether they're employed or unemployed or whatever, we're not fighting reality. We're fighting what's going on in our brain. Like I slept with that money next to my bed until I found it 2 years ago and realized, oh my gosh, this has been in my bedside table and I never used it, but
Wow.
I needed it to sleep. Right.
Yeah.
So when I'm working with a client, I always have to remember, like, even having great financial habits going into that situation to calm my nervous system, I still needed cash in hand. right? Like, and I
Beautiful.
mean, it was great to then absorb that cash into this Disney experience, being like, everything was fine and it's okay. But I know when I'm talking to a client and telling them like it's going to be okay, whatever their circumstances, whether it be a job loss or a relationship breakdown or whatever, to say it's going to be okay, those are just words. And there's a feeling going on inside that
Yeah.
I can empathize with, where no rational thought was going on when I'm at the bank
Yes.
being like, I need this $1,000 so we can eat.
Yeah.
No, like that's not at all what we needed, but I needed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're saying that. It's helped me understand something so profound because each partner in a relationship needs, like, there's some people who are more risk averse than their partner is, and their partner just needs something that's going to help them feel safe and secure, etc. So, uh, and I also loved that somehow we have made a kind of shame around when you're not doing as well as you did before, or um, you're not as, it's like if you're not thriving constantly, then you're bad and wrong, or there's some judgment around this. And I love that you talked about the food bank and things like that, because there are sometimes that's all set for emergencies. But I look around right now and notice there are so many emergencies happening around the world right now at an unprecedented rate, where one day you have everything and it's either the hurricane knocked it over, the fire burnt it out, the tornado tore it up. And we have, these kinds of things where we don't understand um, how our self esteem is wrapped around money. And we think that we're somebody special because we're so good at this or so good at that. And then we're nothing if we don't have this flow before, etc. And that wave of up and down. um
Oh, you're
and
speaking to my heart. Like you nailed it. I've been working with Western University in Ontario there for the last 5 years on a research project regarding debt repayment and the stigmatization that goes with it, and the potential fear of embarrassment or shame and those kind of things. What we're trying to come to some results with through these studies is figuring out like what is it that stops people from getting the help, because
yes,
it's not shocking to hear people who are willing to reach out for help do better than people who don't reach out for help, but it's trying to figure out what is the blocker, what is stopping
yeah,
us, and how do we unpackage those things, or what do we need to do to release some of that shame. Because when you said earlier, this whole keeping up with the Joneses idea, like that kind of stuff, and it's that gets in the way, because when we pull into
totally.
school to drop off our kids and we're in our minivan, you know we don't know if this minivan is on the verge of being repossessed. Did you pay cash? Did you anything, right? We don't really ask these questions. Not that I'm suggesting we start doing that at school drop off, being like, hey, like, do you own that car? But what happens though is, because we never talk about these things, there's so much. Our neighbors are probably not doing as great as we just assume everyone's doing great. And one of the things I
Yeah,
learned in this relationship transition was, when we talk about it, we release the shame. So
yeah,
like, and I mean, I've been talking about money, whether it's uncomfortable for people or not, for ages. So it wasn't really hard for me to then talk about the relationship breakdown. But what it did is it made room for community. It made room for other people to say, oh my gosh, I'm also going through this and I don't know what to do. Or, oh, I've also robbed my kid's piggy bank like you did, Jen. Like, what do I do now? Or, I'm not working and now I'm single. What happened? So having these conversations, it's the shame, and the shame grows when we're quiet. Because
yeah,
typically, in my experience, and I'm not saying everybody has a safe community to do this, but in my experience, when we speak up and say like, oh, I'm really struggling with this, most times people aren't walking away from that conversation being like, oh god, did you hear that, Jen? It's like, no, I'm having that conversation with them and they're saying, oh my gosh, like,
yeah. There's
yes,
a lot of compassion. There's a
yeah,
lot of this thing, but it's so interesting because we don't understand how much more that's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon at an accelerated pace. And this to me is the most important question that you can have. First off, it's like, people don't understand what wealth is. and they don't understand what money actually is, and they don't understand. They just know that it's like a trading stamp. I give you this, and you give me this goodie that I want, or this thing I need, or this thing that's there for me. So when we look at that and in that money mindset, I know for myself, I have built lots of great things, made lots of money. And then I saw in 2011, 911, yes, that took me out. I mean, that took my business out. I was in another country. I couldn't work in there. It just, boom, it blew up. And the loss of that was like overnight, overnight. And it was like you had cash flow here and then suddenly it was gone. And then, I live in Colorado, and during I can't remember what year it was, but I had built an Amazon store, and it was rocking, rolling in the money. It was just rolling in the money. And I was like, yay, this is working. I'm so excited. And then the state of Colorado decided that Amazon needed to pay them tax. And so what happened was, it was the only state in the union who said Amazon needs to pay tax. And
Of
Amazon said,
course.
nope, I'm not paying tax. Everybody who has a business, Amazon business in Colorado, it was shut down the next day. So I had this really great cash flow. And then the next day, nothing, just boom, like that. There are so many things that we can do that, success isn't this trajectory of, oh God, I'm doing great and everything's wonderful. And it's the ability to move through that. And I think your money habits, I want to talk about money habits right now. And I want to talk about the three most important money habits that you think everybody needs to learn as an individual and as a couple or somebody in a business partnership. What are the three money habits they need to learn?
They need to know what's coming in. They need to know what's going out, and they need to find a harmony between what's happening now and what needs to happen in the future. Because we can have outstanding years, but if we keep none of it, it like what's I don't want to say what's the point. We're probably having a great experience, but it's finding that harmony between like what are
Yeah.
we using and what are we keeping. So what's
Mhm.
coming in, what's going out, and what are we keeping, and find that harmony between using some now and making sure that we've got some for the future in the case of an emergency, or in the case that, I don't know, one day we don't want to work anymore.
Yeah.
Like one of my many jobs is that I also do life insurance. And I say to people all the time, like, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news that we're all going to die. Like,
Yeah.
it's we're
Eventually.
all, like, let's all hope we get so old we don't want to or can't work. Like, that's the hope here. So assuming that happens, what's our plan? Right. And it's finding that balance between, like, we only live once, we're only young once, and okay, but also, like, let's hope we get to be really old. Let's hope that for ourselves, and plan for that too. So those
Yeah,
are
and I
those
cannot.
are three.
That's the most foundational piece. I mean, I still have insurance, and I bought my insurance early in my 30s. And I think it's so important to have. It is the foundational thing. It's like you don't know, and I know this sounds so Pollyanna, everybody says it. You don't really know if today's your last day. But if you actually thought about it for a moment, if today was your last day, and I don't mean to bring the Nickelback song up, but I like Nickelback. But if today was your last day, how would you want your family to be as they were grieving you?
Yeah.
And grief of losing a loved one isn't something that goes away in a week and you're like, okay, I'm over it. Let's go back to work. Grief is something, how do you want your kids to live? And to me, that foundational piece of life insurance is absolutely key.
Well,
Absolutely key.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I feel like life insurance marketing comes from a place of, like, if you die, and it's always really quite like,
Yeah.
which I'm not. I mean, I get it, but it's not my favorite. And so over the summer, I had this beautiful opportunity where I reached out to my community and said, anybody who's been the recipient of a life insurance benefit, can you, like, who's willing to talk to me? Will you talk to me?
Ooh.
Because what I wanted to hear was, like, okay, I understand there are horrifyingly large amounts of tragic stories where someone passes away with no life insurance, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. But I wanted to talk to the families who had been touched by losing a loved one who then received a payment. And this one mom, oh, I might cry when I say it. I cried listening to all of it, but she was talking about, um, of course, like her husband was great, healthy, went off to play golf with friends, and suffered a fatal heart attack during the game. And she was
Mhm.
at the grocery store. Her 15-year-old son is the one who got the call at home from the police
Oh my
department.
God.
And when she gets home, and I'm thinking, like, at this point, the world doesn't make sense, right? You got a 15-year-old son, a 19-year-old daughter, your husband went golfing, and he's never coming home.
Yeah.
And she gets home, and the first thing her young son asks her is, "Are we going to have to move?"
Oh my
And I'm
God.
like, oh, like, what do you say in those moments? And she just said, she's like, nothing made sense. And I didn't know how to tell him like anything, because I also am learning how to exist in a world now where the man we love doesn't. And she just said, she's like, I can't even tell you. They'd put the policy in place 20 years prior. And she just said, to be able to just sit there in that moment and put that concern aside for him and say, like, I don't, like, no, we're not moving, we're gonna be okay. And she's like, I don't know how we're gonna be okay. I don't know how we're gonna live in a world where, his father doesn't exist anymore, but
Yeah.
I know that we're financially going to be okay, and we have time to not be okay while we grieve. And
Yes.
I just was like, oh my God. And so talking to the families who were touched by these tragedies where they lost a loved one that, who they shouldn't have lost at that time, right? Or, I talked to a mom who lost her 9-year-old son, and I'm like, oh my, like, it's all so heartbreaking. But to hear that these families had room to grieve, and that they could stay in their homes, and that they weren't like worrying about buying food, or, keeping the kids in hockey, or whatever life was, they could keep
Yeah.
as much as they could normal while they learned how to function now in a life without their loved ones. So I'm really trying, to
Yes.
use this year as an opportunity to talk, not about like, well,
Yes.
if you don't have life insurance and you
Yes.
die, your family could, like, it's like, no, how about, like, there were beautiful, beautiful stories of families who put these policies in place, and because of that, like, it didn't make their grief any less, it just gave them room to grieve.
Yes, and I also wanna take it a step further as well, because I think this is such an incredible point, and I have witnessed, that happening to someone. I wanna talk about the person who has life insurance right now, and maybe, you buy that house and you get that life insurance policy and you're like, "Yes, I've got it. Now I've got it. I have peace of mind," and you forget it. I
Hmm.
don't think that's smart. I think every few years you need to pull that policy out and sit down and say, how is this functioning? I want to tell you, I've sat down with clients who have had more insurance on their children than they did on the parents. Now, I want to say that every insurance person is ethical, blah, 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 but I don't think that. And I think you pulling out your policy and saying, fundamentally, my family structure has grown. And
Hmm.
you may think a 500,000 is perfect for you, but maybe because of inflation, college tuitions, everything else that you want, 500,000 is just going to scrape by, and they're not going to be as settled as they could be if you actually insured yourself appropriately. Families grow, needs grow. And I want to tell you something else. It's like, I think this foundational piece of it is people see insurance as an expense. They're like, well, we can't afford that. Well, I got to tell you, this is the point where if you can't afford the insurance you need, you got to do something different. You
Yeah.
got to do something different. And I want to talk about one of the things that we can do different. What's some of the things that we can do to, if you just talk to Jen and say, I bought this when we were married 8 years ago. I now have two other children. I had one child there. Now I got two or three. The second you add a second child, you need to be talking about how to grow that or expand it. And you have to make sure that the policy the warranties and the guarantees still match your goals. If they don't, you need to work with somebody right then who's going to readjust them. That's what Jenn does. So you want to be able to sit down with somebody and say, protection is one portion of your financial goals, but it is the most important if something happens to you or not. And I got my insurance young when I was healthy, because you don't know what you don't know. And the second that you have a cancer or you're disqualified,
Yeah.
you need to get it while you're qualified. It's the best part of your investment. And I'm not trying to preach anything that I haven't done,
Yeah.
that I don't do, that I still do right now. I want to talk about going to looking at their financial plans, because I think when people have financial plans, they should be reviewed. And I even think sometimes they should reviewed quarterly or half year, depending on what your goals are. And I want to know, if you're sitting right now and you're in a new relationship and you're a new family, you're usually in love and you're just, blah, blah, blah. And all you can do is look at their smiley, happy face and, oh, I love him. I love her. And you think love will conquer all. What's the basic things that people need to have in place? We have insurance. Then let's go to the next step here.
Yeah. So, absolutely, insurance, you nailed it. Like reviewing that often. That same family I was talking about, that was her one regret. I said, "Do you have any advice you would give to anybody else?" And she said, "We bought it 20 years prior and never revisited it.
Yeah.
It should have been for more. We were earning more money." So, that's not, anything is better than nothing, but that was for sure her feedback as well. So you nailed it on that one. Once that's put in and you're saying like, okay, well, now you're in a new relationship and all the things, I'm my views on this have changed substantially, having gone through a relationship breakdown, right? So I married my high school sweetheart. Everything we had, we built up together, right? We were children when we met. So there was no like, I brought this, he brought that. We were just babies who, built up a life together. But what you learn in the end, if you put the feelings aside, is like, it's a business transaction. It's a monetary transaction trying to pull everything apart. So when I'm looking at it now, going forward, like when I'm working with clients who are blending families or even starting relationships as adults, right? When you're children and you're bringing in nothing, well, everything's half and half anyways. But the complexities of like, oh, maybe now someone's bringing in children from a previous marriage, or maybe someone has a house and the other person doesn't. So now when I'm working with clients, going like, okay, so your insurance is taken care of, like what does your day-to-day cash flow look like? But also, like, it might not sound super romantic, but like, why are we not putting a formal structure in place that's like, this is what I brought and this is what you brought? And sure, like we're gonna, Cinderella and Prince Charming, sure, we're making it all the way this time, great. But if not, like, what's going to happen? So it might sound anti-romantic and not like a
Yeah.
comfortable conversation, but I met with one client who was saying like she had, her husband now had significant assets going into their relationship. And so they have a prenup. And she's like, I know it doesn't sound romantic. I was like, are you kidding? Like, this is the most romantic thing I've ever heard, because
It
you're
is.
entering into this partnership being like, I'm just here for you. And great. If you guys make it all the way to the end, fantastic. Like, what a beautiful gift that was unnecessary. But also, like, what a beautiful way to just make it easy later if things don't go
Yes.
the way you think they're going to.
Mhm.
So, stuff happens. And so when families are blending now, I'm really like, okay, but what are you bringing? Like, are you good if this then later gets divided in half? Are you really sure? Because, especially if there's an inequity here,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, well, it gets complex. And so we need to sometimes just take a minute and be like, I love you enough to have this hard conversation, instead of saying,
Absolutely.
I love you so much, we don't need to have it. It's like, no, no, no. I love you enough that we can have this conversation. I love you enough to talk about, like, well, I have a life insurance policy that covers my kids. Do I want to name your kids in it? Right? I have some clients who are like, absolutely, my stepkids are my kids, and we're dividing it equally between everyone. I have
Beautiful.
others who are like, hey, but they also have another parent that's going to take care of them, and I'm the only one taking care of these guys. So, like, it's really just loving yourself, your partner, your new family enough to
Yeah.
have the conversations to figure out, like, it's okay to maybe not want to divide between all the children the same. It's okay to
Yeah.
want to do that and not pass judgment on each other. And even when you're coming up with a cash flow plan for how the money is going to work in your household, understanding that, like, why is there something that feels so important to your partner that isn't important to you? Right? Like,
Oh, I
if
love that.
I have one client where she could eat out never and never care, like not ever eating out. Whereas her partner, they're like, this is a thing for him, and it was source of conflict. I'm like, okay, but like he's really not letting this go. So like, what's the rest of it? Get curious, ask the questions,
You
and
know, I want to talk about that for a second because I'm going to be fully transparent. Robin, my partner, is exceptional with money and she does everything for that. But in our relationship, that was the thing. She would, if she doesn't care to eat out at all. Never, never, never. I'm always, hey, eat out, eat out, eat out. And when I got to examine that, when I really did the underneath work, I remember being told, especially if you're a professional, that you shouldn't waste time when you could be closing a deal. When you could be closing a deal over lunch, over dinner, over that, do it over and over and over and over again. And what I found out over time is that is a big lie. And the eating at home, I actually prefer more. I don't mind going out every once in a while now, but doing the closing so that I can have the food tax write off and everything they sell you on, and that it's kind of part of the suit of being successful is being able to eat out all the time. Then that suddenly dissipated for me. And I'm so glad you said that because it's sold at a lot of conferences. Don't ever, why are you eating at home? You go out and you take that client out to dinner. You take that. And I remember that drilling it in my head. And now I think it's old and archaic because now I'm talking to you and we're in two different time zones in two different countries having this conversation right in the moment in real time. So some of the systems that we learn may be archaic about money, but I love that you said that.
well, and for him, like what it turned out is that during work, he like that was his opportunity to socialize. He didn't like to go in the evenings on the weekends with his friends
Mm,
and take away from family time. Whereas during the work week, he
interesting.
was already away from them. So he's like, okay, but I'm not spending money on other things. Like, this is what I want to be doing. So when she had a better understanding and was able to be like, oh, okay, I didn't see it that way, right? But then also having the conversation to say like, okay, well, what's the appropriate amount of family money we can allocate to this to not derail us from the goals we're working towards, right? So finding a place where he could go without guilt or anything, and enjoy these lunches, but
Yeah.
also in a way that kept his family on track for what they wanted to do. And and it's, and like, I mean, I remember the funniest, this woman I used to work with, Oreo cookies were her thing. Like, she had like boxes of them all the time in her pantry, and like her husband's like, why are we spending so much money on Oreo cookies? I'm like, I can't even, I don't know. Well, it turns out like she grew up in a house where there wasn't a ton of money, and she knew that things were great when there was a box of Oreo cookies, like things were going good. So she just has this childhood memory
Oh,
that like she associates cookie, like these Oreo
interesting.
cookies, with safety. So it's like, well, of course she wants to have some in her pantry, and things were going amazing for them. So now she's got even more because she's like, look at this representation of how great we're doing. But it's just getting curious and understanding like these stories. So instead of just looking at our partner being like, God, like, what are you doing? Like, why are we buying so many cookies? Or why are you always out for lunch? It's like, well, hang on a sec. Like, this is their opportunity to build those connections and those friendships without taking away from family time. Or Oreo cookies represent safety for her. Like, and just trying to get curious and understand, why are we doing what we're doing? Because we all carry with us, money stories and money experience. I mean, I wasn't logical. I put $1,000 in my bedside table, but I did it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. For me, it's always having investments. To me,
mhm.
it's like, and I don't have investments that I don't control or that I don't know about or that I can't monitor or that I can't move or switch. I'm really particular. I don't like to have a lot of the cash flows out of my control. However, there are a couple that I think are important. And one of them would be retirement investments. So, even if you have a Roth IRA or an IRA of some sorts, I'm not sure what you guys have in Canada, but in America we have those. I think there was some feeling I got. Now, I started that when I was in college because my dad told me once that there was going to be no Social Security and you needed to do this now or you could be a bag lady. And it scared me. But I was in college. So, of course, I worked at McDonald's or something like that. And I was saving like $25 a week because that's what I could afford. Best thing, best advice I ever got. And I want to talk about um, one of the things that you talked about earlier with the mixed families. I want to talk to the gay families out there right now because I'm really, I understand this. I know back in the day when I had a high profile job where I could have been killed very easily, I spent some time as a police officer, that I spent it at a time when there was no equality and there was no, you can get married gay, and none of that existed. And I had to have two insurance policies, one for me and one for my partner and her kids, which they were mine. And I want to talk about that blended family thing. The blended family thing, I think, is so important. Let me just tell you something. She just made financial pillow talk very sexy. So we can go ahead and have these conversations about what we want to do. And if you have them now, then the expectations later, because it, if you don't know if you're going to fall in love with somebody who has kids or not while you have kids. You don't know what's going to happen, but you do know that you need to have these conversations as to what you're doing, because that lowers the stress. Because later it'll be like, you only care about your kids, you don't care about my kids. You want to fundamentally squelch that conversation right now and be able to do that. And I also want to talk to business owners, the business owners with a partner. Now, I know this from fact. 4 days before I was supposed to launch a program, my business partner, who was going to launch it with me, died. He died instantly like that. And I cannot tell you, I had $46,000 into this project. And I threw the project into neutral because I didn't know what to do without my partner being there. So it's like these things, these conversations that she's asking you to have are for everything. And right now, I also want to give a shout out to American businesses that are smaller right now. You all are complaining about how big banks get bailout money that you don't get and everything else. Well, I'm going to give you a web address right now. And I want, Robin, will you type the web address in? There is a form of bailout money for you right now. If you have five W-2 employees, if you have five W-2 employees, you want to go to this web address right now, and it's www.ercfundsinfo.com. And thank you. Here it is. There it is. You can get right now money for your business, that if you have five W-2s or more, and you can speak to an expert and have them help you get some money in your business. Now, I don't care if your money's doing well. Banks were doing billions of dollars and still got billions of dollars to back them up. So you want to get your money now, ercfundsinfo.com. Just go there and watch the video and watch what's happening and get yourself into the slot to talk to somebody about getting some monies. There's money everywhere. We're talking about the key of insurance, having hard conversations, having partnership conversations. If your business is struggling right now or your business is doing well and you have a partnership, you should have insurance for the both of you. You should have a savings plan, and you should always take the free government money, the bailout money, the any kind of money that you can get right now. And if you don't know what it is, ercfundsinfo.com. Thank you for that, Robin. I'm going to tell everybody who's driving right now, please relax. Everything that Jenn and I are talking about, if you want to talk to her about insurance, if you want to talk to her about your financial plan, relax. It's all going to be in the notes. Her website, is in the scroll of today's show. You can definitely have a conversation with her about all of these fundamental things. I want to go on to the next thing because, right now she's here. So I should be squeezing as much knowledge as I can get for you. So I want to talk to the person right now who hasn't made good decisions and who thinks that she's or he's bad, wrong, horrible, or perhaps they've had financial infidelity, which means you took a loan out behind your partner's back that they don't know about. And you need somebody to talk to that's going to help you rethink what you're doing and make a plan for you and get you on track together. It's better that you come clean now than, it be a surprise later. So I want to talk about the person. I want you to talk to the person, Jenn, that's struggling right now and doesn't know how to get forward or move forward. What would you say to them? And what would you suggest for them?
I'm a big believer that any secrets always find their way to the surface, anyways. So when it comes to stuff like maybe having taken out a loan that you didn't tell your partner about, or racked up a credit card or something that they're unaware of, I do believe eventually it all comes up to the surface. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge advocate for it's better to come from you than from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I am not saying it's an easy conversation to have, and without knowing the complexities of each individual partnership, I'm honesty is, this sounds like a mom moment, but like honesty is the best policy, where we can't like
Yeah.
literally in terms of like whether there's a loan or just like you're in it together as a couple and you don't know what to do, like just start. Like, and I know that might sound overly simple, but that is the hardest step. When I'm starting to work with a new client, that initial email is generally the hardest part for them. Is saying like, I don't actually know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or I should be doing better, but I can't seem to get ahead and I don't know why. Sending that initial email or having that initial conversation with your partner, or just digging into it yourself and starting, open the bills that haven't been opened, print out a bank statement and look and see where your money's been going. Like literally anything is better than nothing, because we can put our head in the sand, but at some point we got to pull it out.
Yes.
And the sooner you do it the better. So whether you're 20, 30, 50, 60, they're like we have to just start. So taking a look, I usually do, if I'm working with a client who either wants to start building wealth or get out of debt or wherever they are, right? This isn't just getting out of debt. If you're like, well, I'm in my mid 40s and I have no savings, awesome. Like, where we just need to start. I generally will start with like, let's make a net worth statement, right?
Yes.
What do you owe? Who do you owe money to? Do you owe money to family, friends, Visa? Like, who are you owing money to? And then what do you own? Do you own your home? What's the value of that? Do you have any savings? Because what I always want to do is have a snapshot of like, where are we right now? And sometimes for the clients who are in debt, like that's a hard one to do, but also we can't unsee what we know. So if
Yeah.
we just keep spending and we're like, oh, we're not really sure. Well, one great way to stop doing that is know
Yeah.
what's going on. I know when I was watching my numbers, I'm like, ooh, what doesn't make me want to go buy that? Knowing that I still have to pay for the last 17 of those I bought, right? So a net worth statement, which is literally just a list of like, what do I owe and to whom, and what do I own and how much is it worth, gives me a snapshot of what am I doing right now? What do I have? What does this look like? And so that it gives us also a way to like monitor our progress and make sure that like, okay, well, maybe we're not paying down our debts, but our net worth is still going up because we're saving money. So because if we're just always monitoring our debts, we might not see that we're making forward progress, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe we've stalled on making those payments, but our investments are growing, or something like that. So I always, when I'm starting, like honesty with ourselves, with our partner, any invested parties, like that's where I'm starting, and then I'm making that net worth sheet to be like, okay, where am I at? And is this going in the direction of where I want to be? Because even if things feel good and they feel fine, and you're not like, this isn't just for people who are like, I'm so stressed. Like maybe you're feeling great, but you're like, oh, could I be doing better?
Yeah.
right? Could I be doing better? Am I doing the
Yep.
best? So, like when you're saying, like, not just with life insurance, but your financial plan, like, when's the last time you looked at it? Are you going in the direction you want to go at the pace that you think you'd like to be going?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you are. I gotta say this for everyone there. I have had things that have happened to me, like in 9/11 happened. Um, I was instantly out of business, and because I had people working and everything else, I was instantly $87,000 in debt. And I remember for me, that was, the most debt I'd ever had. And I couldn't sleep. And I was, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And the being able to call somebody and go, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? What are we going to do? You have to learn that sometime in your life, at least once. If you learn it once, and Jenn's there to teach you how to do this. If you learn it once, look at all the stress that will cease from your life because eventually, and I love what you said. I want to talk about owning a house or not owning a house. I'm a big proponent for owning a house. It's still an asset no matter what. It's still going to grow up, etc. I know there are a lot of people that are, well, nobody should own a house. It's stupid to own a house. Why would you own a house? If you own a house that you spend way above your budget for, that's when you're stupid. But when you're in a reasonable thing, and the thing about I'm only successful if I have a McMansion, that's so not true as well. And I want to know, what are your thoughts about that?
I have some clients who've chosen rentals as like their how they want to proceed in their lives. I enjoy home ownership quite a bit. I think I like that no one can tell me they're selling it. That's my
That's right.
decision to make.
That's right.
But I think sometimes like home ownership for me isn't necessarily just a number thing. It's like, do you desire it? Do you want to be able to just call the landlord to come in and fix some things? Do you want to be able to, make decisions on what you do to your own property? So yes, like 100%, if you're going to get into home ownership, like do it in a way that I think we need to be careful that we're not house poor, right? Because
Yeah.
like
So many
we're
people get
humans. We
there.
like to do fun things, right? So
Hmm.
making sure that we can afford the rest of our lives while we have the home ownership. But other than like making sure you buy a house that makes financial sense, I really do think it's more than just numbers, because I think the argument can actually be made in either direction, to be like, oh, it's more logical to not own a home, or it's more logical to own a home. But like, what do you really desire? Do you like, I like that no one can tell me what to do with my house. No one can tell me they're selling. I had a couple of friends this year who were renting, and the landlords like actually were selling because real estate in my city exploded. And there was nothing to be bought. So the prices were insane, which I mean, great. If you own a rental property, get rid of it, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
going to cash in, do it. But then then someone else is kind of controlling where you're living. And I like to control the things that I can. So
Jenn, I think this has been such a powerful conversation because to me, whether you're a new relationship or you're starting your family or your family has added babies to it, or whether you own a business and you have a business partner, this is the last thing I want to stop again right now. Business partnership. I'm specifically talking to those millions and millions of small business owners that are married, and you're a couple run business, and you have, whether it's at home, whether it's anywhere. The reason I'm saying, and I think you should pick up the phone and call Jenn, just pick up, and her address is in her address, her web address is in the scroll, and it's financialfundamentals.ca. And you really want to get to the point where you are talking to someone, because we don't understand how risky being in a business together is. So let's say Jenn and I start a business, and I say, Jenn, it's $10,000 to get in, and we throw $10,000 in each, and we have $10,000, and everything goes belly up. We've lost $10,000. If a couple goes into business for themselves, and I'm going to just put her web address up here, financialfundamentals.ca, And we have the about page link up there, so you can see that. But right now, if you go in together, it's your family that's at risk. It's your house that's at risk. Everything is risk. You may be thinking by watching all the videos of all these people, I make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars doing all this. And there's real estate investing, this, that, and the other. When you come together as a couple and you haven't established the correct things to have in place, you are taking the highest business risk there is known to man. There is higher business risk when it's a couple. And so, if you want to be able to sleep at night, if you want to be able to be there for your family, if you want to have a goal that says, babe, we're going to have rich and be this lifestyle, you have to have a plan. And that's what Jenn does. And you don't want to go it alone. It's not, our love will conquer all. No, it won't. It doesn't. You don't know if your love will be evaporated just like that. Like, hi, dad went golfing and he didn't come back. You don't know what you don't know. And I know that every successful person, whether you're, and I'm talking, if you're not married and you're a business partnership, goes for you too. You want to get to the point where you are protecting yourself and know the path and the goals you're both trying to achieve together. Once you have that goals that you're trying to achieve together, you become united. And what it does, the most important thing Jenn does, is stop the power struggle that can happen in the financial world. That power struggle is the number one reason for divorce. So if you're going to act on anything, that power struggle, try and make it a united knowingness and have that in plan right now. I don't care if you're dating somebody and you're thinking of proposing to them, I want you to call Jenn. If you're a business owner, whether you're a couples or partnership, just go call Jenn. Get these things in place right now. I know how painful financial stress is and having to get through it. You want to have something in place from the start. And just remember this, everybody on the show, financial pillow talk is sexy. Have those tough conversations right now, wherever you are. I don't care if you're married 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, do it right now. Jenn, it has been such a powerful conversation. I just want to say, if you have anything that you wanted to say to somebody who's thinking about working with you, what would it be?
Uh, be my honor. The best way to reach me is absolutely through the website. Send an email and we will connect and see if I can be of service for whatever financial goals you are currently working on. And
Remember,
Vickie, thank you for having me. It's been a lovely conversation.
oh my God, I loved it so much. I can't even tell you. I'm so passionate about it. I could talk about it every day. It's just something that I'm really passionate about. I bring you the best experts from around the world every Wednesday on the Coffee Break Show. Today is the end of the Coffee Break Show. You have one action: www.financialfundamentals.ca. That's where you're going to go. I'll see you on the next Coffee Break Show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Bye-bye.